Most people believe communication is about words, how much you say, how fast you respond, how clever your argument sounds. But the Stoics knew better. They taught that true mastery isn't found in volume or control. It's found in restraint, clarity, and emotional discipline. In relationships, we often speak to defend, to win, or to be right. But real connection, the kind that lasts, only happens when we speak to understand. Communication isn't about dominating a conversation. It's about staying calm while emotion rises. It's about listening when the ego wants to argue. And above all, it's about choosing principle over pride. This video is not about how to talk more. It's about how to talk better, with intention, with presence, with the kind of wisdom that creates safety, not chaos. Because the goal isn't to be louder, it's to be clearer, not to always be right, but to always be real. Let's begin. Part 1. Stop talking to win, talk to understand. Most people confuse communication with argument. They don't enter conversations seeking clarity. They seek control. They don't listen to learn. They listen to respond. And in relationships, this turns every disagreement into a silent competition. Who's more right? Who's more logical? Who can speak with more force? But as the Stoics taught, the goal isn't to overpower, but to understand. Not to win, but to live in alignment with reason and virtue. Every time you raise your voice to prove a point, every time you rush to defend instead of listen, you've already lost the deeper battle, the one for peace, intimacy, and connection. You may get the last word. You may feel justified. But if your partner walks away feeling misunderstood or unseen, what have you really won? True communication, like Stoicism itself, requires ego to be put aside. It demands self-restraint. It requires that you trade the impulse to react for the discipline to reflect. To ask, what is really being said here? What truth is beneath these words? What pain is hiding under their anger? When your partner speaks, resist the urge to fight their perception. Start by understanding it. Don't treat their emotions as a threat to your position. See them as an opportunity to connect. Stoicism doesn't teach us to suppress feeling. It teaches us to examine it, to respond deliberately, to hold space for discomfort without collapsing under it. So when conflict arises, don't fuel the fire with more emotion. Bring clarity instead. Say, "Help me understand what you're feeling." Say, "That wasn't my intention, but I want to know how it came across." Say, "Let's get to the truth together." Because in a relationship, the highest virtue isn't cleverness, it's compassion with clarity. And compassion doesn't come from needing to be right. It comes from being anchored. You don't need to be the loudest. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to show up from a place of calm and speak from a place of truth. That's not weakness. That's strength restrained. And that's the kind of strength that makes love safe enough to grow. Part 2. Use "I feel" instead of "you always." Anger is easy. Blame is instinctual. But a Stoic knows, the moment you point a finger, you abandon responsibility for your own inner state. In relationships, we often default to accusation. You never listen. You always ignore me. You don't care. But accusation provokes defense. It closes the door to dialogue. And instead of connection, you get combat. A wiser path, the Stoic path, is to own your experience without exaggeration. Not, "You make me feel this way," but "Here's how I'm experiencing this moment." Not, "You always do this," but "I feel unseen when this happens." Because your feelings are real, your perception matters, but when you present it as universal truth, as a verdict, you give your partner no room to respond without being on trial. And a relationship is not a courtroom, it's a partnership. I feel creates space. It shows emotional discipline. It says, I am aware of what's happening within me, and I choose to bring it forward with care. This isn't about weakness, it's about precision. The Stoics believed in speaking only when necessary, and speaking only what is true. Exaggeration, drama, emotional weaponry. That's a sign of someone ruled by impulse, not guided by wisdom. So the next time you're hurt, pause. Ask yourself, am I trying to attack, or am I trying to be understood? Then speak accordingly. Say, I felt distant last night, and I didn't know how to reach you. I felt anxious when plans changed suddenly. I want to feel closer to you, but I need more reassurance in moments like that. This kind of language doesn't just protect the relationship, it elevates it. Because it's rooted in awareness, not blame, in internal clarity, not emotional chaos. And when both people commit to speaking like this, from truth, not ego, trust grows. Tension softens, and the relationship becomes less about who's right and more about what's real. Part 3. Don't expect mind reading. Speak your needs clearly. A Stoic accepts reality, and the reality is this: your partner cannot read your mind. You may wish they could. You may believe that love means intuitively knowing what the other needs. But wishing is not wisdom. And love, at its most stable, is built on clarity, not assumption. When you expect someone to guess what you want, you're handing them an invisible rule book and punishing them for not following it. That's not communication. That's emotional sabotage. The Stoic way is to speak with precision, to express clearly, to release the fantasy of being understood without words, and instead embrace the power of conscious expression. This means saying calmly, I need more quiet connection before bed. I get anxious when things go unspoken for too long. I would feel more supported if you checked in during the day. You are not too much for asking. You are not weak for needing. You are practicing the highest form of strength, emotional honesty without chaos. Silence may feel safe in the short term, but over time it breeds resentment. And resentment is simply what builds when needs are ignored, by others or by yourself. The Stoic doesn't suppress their truth, they refine it. They don't demand, they declare. They don't expect others to read what hasn't been said. They say it, plainly. This isn't about being cold or detached. It's about being anchored. Because when your partner knows what you need, they have a choice, to meet you there or to show you they cannot. Either way, you get clarity, and clarity is peace. So speak. Speak simply. Speak truthfully. Not from entitlement, but from groundedness. You'll be surprised how often people rise to meet you when you remove the guesswork. Part 4. Validate before you defend. When someone brings their hurt to you, your first duty, according to Stoic principle, is not to correct them, but to understand them. The reflex to defend is strong. It's ego saying, protect your image. Don't let this be your fault. But a Stoic knows ego is not truth. And truth, especially in relationships, begins with presence. When your partner says, that hurt me, the impulse is to explain, that wasn't my intention. You misunderstood. You're being sensitive. But what if you paused? What if, instead of defending your position, you validated their perception? Not because you're guilty, but because they're human. And because your role in love is not to win the argument, it's to hold space for what's real. Validation is not agreement. It's not submission. It's simply this: I see that you're hurting. I acknowledge your experience. I care enough to pause my defense and be present with your pain. It might sound like, I didn't mean to cause that, but I hear what you're saying. That wasn't how I saw it, but I get how it landed that way. I want to understand, even if it's hard to hear. These are not the words of weakness. They are the words of mastery. A Stoic doesn't run from discomfort. They sit with it. They ask, what virtue is required of me in this moment? Often, the answer is humility, listening, the patience to let emotion pass without escalating it. You don't lose anything by validating someone's experience. In fact, you gain the very thing relationships need most: safety. And safety is what allows truth to be shared. It's what makes love resilient. So next time your partner speaks from a place of pain, do not armor up. Be still, be open. Validate first. Clarity can come later. Part 5. Timing matters. Not every moment is for deep talks. A Stoic doesn't just speak truth, they choose when to speak it. In relationships, timing is often the difference between connection and conflict. You may have something important to say, something honest, even necessary. But if you speak it in the middle of tension, distraction, or exhaustion, it may fall on deaf ears. Or worse, it may trigger unnecessary defense. The Stoics taught us to observe the moment, to choose action based not on emotion, but on reason. And reason says this: not every hour is meant for heavy truths. Not every mood is ready to receive them. So when you feel the urge to speak, pause. Ask, is this the right time? Are we both calm enough to hear each other? Will this bring us closer, or just create more noise? This doesn't mean avoiding hard conversations. It means respecting the conditions under which they can actually be fruitful. Sometimes wisdom is waiting. Sometimes restraint is the highest form of care. That might mean saying, there's something important I want to talk about. Can we find a good time later today? I want to bring this up, but not in the middle of this tension. Let's talk when we're both clearer. That kind of discipline creates safety. It shows your partner that your goal isn't to win, it's to connect. That your truth matters, but so does their ability to hear it. Because communication isn't just what you say, it's when you choose to say it. Speak with clarity. Speak with care. But most of all, speak with timing. That is the Stoic way. Not silence out of fear, but silence until the moment is ready. Part 6. Silence isn't the enemy. Learn to pause, not withdraw. In most relationships, silence gets misunderstood. One person goes quiet, the other panics. Assumptions build. Are they angry? Are they punishing me? Are they shutting down? But the Stoics understood the power of silence, not as avoidance, but as discipline, as self-regulation, as space to reflect rather than react. Not every silence is a withdrawal. Sometimes it's wisdom in motion. When conflict arises, the most dangerous thing you can do is speak from a storm, reacting out of wounded pride, letting emotion write the script. A Stoic knows you are not your first impulse, and so we pause. We give ourselves a moment, not to suppress the truth, but to prepare to speak it from a calmer place. If you need space, you must say so. Silence, unexplained, can feel like abandonment. But silence, communicated, becomes strength. Say, "I need a little time to gather my thoughts so I don't say something I'll regret. I care about this conversation, but I want to approach it from clarity, not emotion. I'm not shutting down, I'm calming down." That's not weakness, that's control. That's you managing your inner life, not letting it spill out recklessly onto the person you love. And if your partner needs silence, don't take it personally. Don't rush to break it out of fear. A Stoic doesn't panic in the face of quiet. They observe. They hold steady. They allow the other person's space to return in their own time. Not out of coldness, but out of respect. But silence can become a weapon if misused. There's a difference between space and stonewalling. One is meant for restoration. The other is meant to punish. So use silence with intention. Use it to anchor yourself. Use it to listen inwardly before you speak outwardly. And when the words return, let them be shaped by reason, not reactivity. Remember, the strongest words come after the deepest calm. Let your silence be a form of wisdom, not a form of war. Part 7. Regulate yourself before you try to fix the conversation. The Stoics taught us that the first battlefield is within. Before you try to change the world or your partner, you must learn to master your own state. In relationships, we often jump into conversations wanting to fix things, to resolve conflict, to be understood. But if we're still flooded, angry, anxious, emotionally stirred, we end up doing more harm than good. Because when your nervous system is hijacked, your words lose their wisdom. You don't speak with clarity. You react. You defend. You say things not because they're true, but because you're hurt. A Stoic doesn't enter battle unarmed. They prepare. They stabilize. They ask, "Am I calm enough to speak wisely right now?" And if the answer is no, they wait. Regulation is the prerequisite to resolution. You cannot bring peace to a conversation while carrying war inside your body. This means noticing when your heart rate spikes, when your tone sharpens, when your chest tightens. It means taking a breath, sometimes a full break, to come back to center. That break might look like taking a 15-minute walk to cool down, journaling your emotions before speaking them, saying, "I need a short pause. I want to have this conversation, but I need to approach it better." This isn't avoidance, it's strategy. Because your partner deserves your full presence, not your adrenaline. They deserve your insight, not your outburst. And you deserve a relationship where communication is sacred, not reactive. When you regulate first, you bring wisdom into the room. You become the calm in the storm, not the storm itself. You make it easier for your partner to meet you with the same energy. And if they don't, if they're still dysregulated, don't escalate. Don't mirror chaos. Stay still. Stay grounded. The Stoic way is not to match emotion with emotion, but to hold steady in truth and reason. Because the point of communication isn't just to be heard, it's to bring harmony. And harmony begins with you. So the next time you feel triggered, don't push through it just to say your piece. Step back, breathe, return to your values, and only then speak. That's not delay. That's wisdom in motion. That's the strength most people mistake for silence, but that Stoics know as self-mastery.